welcome everyone to, are we calling this Game Buffs?
We can call it whatever you like.
Yeah, like I think Game Buffs is funny because we're the least buff people that you'll ever meet, probably.
Well,
although I'm just speaking for myself.
You say that,
course,
but since I sent you that email earlier saying that I wasn't buff, I have been working out for the
Okay.
whole of the, and I remain unbuffed, unfortunately. So
Okay.
yeah, we're gonna.
Well, we're not going to be doing any Wii Fit style games for a while anyway, so I think we'll be all right. But basically, I'm Dean Bowman, and this is James Hamblin. Is Hamblin, isn't it? Is that how you say your last name?
Make it sound like we've never met before.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, that is how you say my surname. Yeah.
Cool. You're probably listening to this on Ready Up. So this is a little project that we've decided to embark upon, which is, think of it like a video game reading group where
Without the reading.
Without the
Without the boring reading. Although
yeah.
I say that, and in actual fact, I did end up doing quite a bit of reading for this game. So.
Oh, did you?
Well.
Okay.
Mainly of the notes that I made myself.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah. So anyway, like every 2 weeks or so, we're going to.
2 weeks? I didn't say 2 weeks.
What? It's just I probably shouldn't have.
We really
set
should have.
expectations.
We really should have discussed this beforehand.
Okay.
I get. Your people are going to have to talk to my. This podcast is over. No, 2 weeks. I'm sure 2 weeks will be fine. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that'll be okay, won't it?
Yeah.
It's more time than 1 week. So yeah. So anyway,
I get one phone call a week from this phone, and then I have to go back to my cell. So I hope you realise that it's
keep you locked.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah. Well, anyway, every 2 weeks we're going to be trying to discuss a game in some depth, like a reading group, and then at the end of the episode we'll tell you what we're going to be playing for next time, so you might be able to play along with us if you want to. You don't have to, of course. And for this first episode, chapter, whatever you want to call it, of Game Buffs, we
Sorry.
That's never going to get old, is it? We're going to be looking at a game by Twice Circled called Big Pharma, which is a farming simulator, and you play an overweight farmer who has to plant lots of fields. And
I thought it was something to do with a Jolly Green Giant or something like that, and that I'd be, it's like farming simulator or something along those lines. But sadly. Yeah. I was misled.
It turns out we were both wrong.
Yeah.
Because it's about the pharmaceutical industry. But before you go to sleep, it's actually really interesting and really good. So we're gonna dive in a little bit on this. And first of all, we should talk a little bit about what the game is and how you play it, because it's not really like much else, is it? It's
No, it's not like anything else I've played recently, at least. It's it's very it's an involved game. I will say that for it, and it is definitely an interesting game. But I don't know. Why don't you have a crack at explaining how it works?
Well, on kind of first impressions.
I've got your back. Just fine.
Okay, cool. Just like on the surface, the appearance of it kind of brings to mind games from the past, like Theme Hospital, where you're viewing a kind of like a facility that you're building from an isometric perspective, and it's running as a simulation. And basically, the idea is that you're a pharmaceutical corporation. You're just starting up, apparently, because you've got to start somewhere. You're making production lines of drugs. So the first thing you have to do is you'll have an empty room. You'll have modules on the side of the room, and you use those to import ingredients, and you can send your explorers out to find new ingredients. And I think that the game, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the game procedurally gives different traits and characteristics to the ingredients, and then you use those to mix and make drugs which have different effects, and then you try and sell the drugs and make as much money as you can. But there's lots of tricky, fiddly little things to do along the way, and you're also competing against several other pharmaceutical companies that are also trying to share the same market, patent medicines, and it all gets a little bit cutthroat.
Yeah, that's basically, it's like Breaking Bad, but legit. Basically, you start off in this warehouse that looks like it's just been abandoned by something from the Saw films or something like that, and you have to turn that over time into this hub for a massive pharmaceutical business. And whether you're successful at that or not is very debatable.
So yeah, successful is a is a generous word to use for a lot of my endeavours. I've realised now why I didn't embark on a career in business, because I've driven several businesses into the ground over the last week or so. It's really hard to turn a profit in this game, as it turns out.
I've realised there's a lot of reasons here why I didn't pursue a career at all, basically, or I shouldn't do really. Is the amount of drug companies that I've sent to the wall in the last couple of weeks has been substantial. Let's put it that way. Yeah. It
took me a little while to figure out that, because I mean, at the start of the game, you kind of have two ingredients that you're starting with, so you can, and some very simple machinery, so you can start kind of like generating cures based on those two drugs. You can also hire and send out explorers to find new ingredients, and hire scientists and set them researching new machinery. It's very easy to over-invest in stuff in the opening stages of the game, where you start off with a chunk of money, it disappears pretty quickly. And one thing I realised is that it's not good enough just to make one production line of each drug. You really need to make multiple ones and like maximise your production and income as much as possible, and then like try and eke out a little bit of a profit before you then start looking at the next thing to do. Whereas like when I first started playing it, I was trying to research everything, and I was in the black quicker than, like, I don't know, my student self.
No, it is.
It's in the red, isn't it? Not in the black.
It's in the red.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to say, because I'm going to say more stupid things than that in the course of this, so I was letting that one go.
Okay, but that's really generous.
That's really not. I think. I mean, the thing that maybe the blindingly obvious thing that this game makes you acutely aware of is that in the pharmaceutical industry there is no such thing as generosity. This is not an act of altruism at all. It's you are there to make a profit, and if you don't make a profit, you are not there anymore. So the first thing you have to learn in very quickly, usually, and very harshly in this game, is that you've got to continually be making a profit. And if you can do that, then you're a long way. If you can continuously make a profit, you're a long way to making a successful pharmaceutical company in this business. In this game,
you have these little things like world events that pop up every now and again, which is really interesting. It kind of like pushes you in a direction. So, for example, you'll be trundling along, and suddenly it's like there's a message that pops up saying there's been a massive outbreak of malaria, and so you start heavily investing in anti-malarial drugs just to try and like capitalize on it as much as possible. I see. I didn't do that so much. It's interesting to you were nice and generous.
No, I wasn't. It's interesting to hear you say that, but because there are two main kind of options when you play the game. One is there are quite a few different scenarios that are available to you, ranging in difficulty, and they usually revolve around something like produce X amount of a certain drug within a certain number of years, or make a certain amount of money in a certain number of years, or be able to develop a certain cure for something. And the other part of the game is a free play, where you just get your initial warehouse space, and you start from there, and you can choose how many. The game's still, I think it's still is it in beta at the moment? Yeah,
we should probably say that the game is still in kind of some form of early access, but it can be purchased on Steam.
And on Twice Circle's website as well, I think.
Yes, and on Good Old Games, I think too.
Possibly. I don't know about that. I'm not sure. But yeah, and then there's the free play where you just basically get to go and see how you see how you get on, and you can choose whether you have competitors or not. It's a good idea to have competitors, because otherwise it does start to feel after a little while a little bit aimless. It's more like a practice game really then. But what I found myself doing anyway was that what did you call your company?
I called it Protogen because I'd just been reading the Expanse series of novels, and the evil corporation in that is called Protogen. So
that's a good name.
Good.
Well, we here over at Old Dirty Meds, we decided that it was either that or Secondhand Syringe, so I wasn't sure, but I thought Old Dirty Meds was probably a bit better, a bit more appealing. I basically I became kind of like the supermarket own brand of the meds business, in that I wasn't racing to do anything at all. There is a way in the game, which is quite simple, that you learn quite quickly, that if you're the first to develop a certain kind of drug, or even it goes even deeper than that, a certain type of a certain kind of drug. So you could, for example, if you had a painkiller in cream form, you can patent that, and you pay quite a considerable amount of money, and it lasts. The patent lasts for however long you're willing to pony up the dough for. I was never really. I tried a couple of patents and things like that, but I very quickly, in fact, started to fill the role of. I just kept on turning over a profit, and I made, okay drugs. They were all right. They weren't the best. They were pretty cheap. They were affordable. So maybe there was a bit of, unintentional virtuousness in there, but. They were accessible to all, and I wasn't the leading manufacturer, but I constantly made a profit, and that's what, like I said before, that's what this game told me. You have to keep on making a profit, and I think the thing that stood out to me most of all, and I was going back and forth on this, because I'm not sure if at the moment whether it's the thing that I think is possibly best about the game, or the thing that is possibly the worst about it, is that it feels right from the start, it feels incredibly clinical and incredibly sterile. I think you touched on it right at the start, and you also mention it in your I'm sure everybody listening to this has already read your wonderful interview on Ready Up with Tim Wicksteed from a few months back, when you said that the visuals look like illustrations from a safety manual, like on an aeroplane or something like that, and they do. That is exactly what they do look like, and it's very kind of sterile, that very clinical environment that you're being placed into. It's all conveyor belts and these scientific machines, like ionizers and dissolvers and things like this, and you, apart from those little messages that pop up, you never ever, and okay, on the kind of the profits and loss screen and things like that, but you never really, you're encased inside your warehouse, and you never really are in touch with the outside world. You're there, you're looking at figures, you're looking at basically production lines and flow charts and things like that, and it's very like I say, it's very kind of withdrawn, and at first I kind of thought, I'm not I'm not sure if that's a great thing, because I don't feel like, there's it doesn't feel that emotional. There's not a huge emotional connection I have. I'm not saving the planet, or anything like that. I'm just looking at sheets, balance sheets, and I'm looking at, like I say, flow charts and things like that. But over time, actually, I came to think that was possibly one of the best things about the game, because in actual fact, I guess that's probably the way it is. You're not, this is the thing that you have to focus on. You have to, whatever you're doing, whether you're, being, an industry pioneer and that's how you're making your money, or whether you're doing what I was doing and, just trying to stay afloat most of the time, you're concentrating on producing a product and producing it to make a profit, and that's the be all and end all. And by way of doing that, you're also helping to make people who are sick feel better. But that's a byproduct.
Yeah, it's people are just kind of statistics. You just get numbers of like, oh, so many people are suffering from this illness, and this is how saturated the market is with this drug, because there is like a really kind of dynamic economy in the game that's affected by supply and demand, and how many of your rival corporations are making the same kind of cure and whatnot. So if you try and flood the market with something, it's going to drop in price. And yeah, it seems really interesting in that respect. And I think like, if people come into the game, if you come into the game thinking that you can just have different approaches to what you're doing, I feel like this is a game with a message in a way. So you can't really be a philanthropist in this game. It's kind of it's almost impossible to be the good guy. It encourages you to think that the industry that you're working in is corrupt, basically, and it is actually, I think, partly inspired by a book called Big Pharma.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, and I think
by Ben Goldacre,
I think,
which is about how the book says how drug companies mislead doctors and harm patients.
Yeah, I think it does start to touch on those things. I think possibly for me, the thing that it taught me was you're not trying to be the good guy, although you may accidentally, not necessarily accidentally, you may turn out to be the good guy. You're being the pragmatic guy all the time, because you have to you're constantly having to make decisions based on what your rivals are doing and what your position is at that current time, whether you have the ability to do things, whether, for example, you've got the money to build a new production line to make a new drug, or whether something's on patent or off patent and you have the ability to exploit that. You're constantly making those judgment calls solely for the purpose of keeping your business afloat or keeping your business, kind of going. And it does in certain situations in the game come down to how, not necessarily fast and loose, but how you're gonna keep the doors open at the end of the day, and it's it's that kind of I think the thing that obviously it's I was going to say it's only a game, but it's just a simulation, but it's interesting. I found how incredibly quickly I really didn't give a damn that much about what was going on with people. I was just looking at the balance sheet.
It's a satire, in some respects, and I mean, there's a author that I really like called Ian Bogost, who wrote a book called Procedural Rhetoric, which basically argues that games are capable of mounting arguments through their mechanics, and it's particularly the case with kind of simulation games like this one, and just the options that it gives you and the things that it makes hard or easy, kind of project a kind of like a particular view of the world or a thing. So in this game, like it's pushing you to be exploitative, and in order to make profits you have to cut corners and you have to kind of make slightly immoral or amoral decisions. And I think that kind of raises some interesting questions and kind of just makes you think about the industry in a little. In a slightly different way, maybe, or maybe you already know this. I don't know.
No. I think that I agree. I think that's. How long exactly do you leave it to release that medicine? Do you do you release it as soon as you can so that you're at the head of the queue, or do you wait and risk a competitor getting in ahead of you? But then you might have more customers if you do wait, because then there'll be more sufferers. So it's definitely raises some very interesting ethical issues that go beyond the kind of old. I've been playing some theme park lately, and whether how much salt you put on the chips or the fries to get people to purchase more drinks. That was that's the Big Pharma equivalent of that.
It goes into a lot more depth.
Yeah.
The other thing that I find really interesting about the game, aside from its kind of ethical kind of like implications and its satire, is just how elegantly designed it is in some ways. Like everything is very literal in the game. So the way it works is like an ingredient and a drug will have up to 4 slots on it, and they can be traits of the drugs can be cures or they can be side effects. And you want the cures, but you don't want the side effects. And each one has an effective range between like 1 and 20. And so if you've got like a drug that cures headaches between 5 and 10 percent concentration, but causes dizziness between 7 and 12, you're going to want to try and put it on the between 5 and 6 where the cure is active but the side effect isn't, and getting those things to line up is really interesting, especially when later on like the more advanced ingredients kind of start getting lots of different traits on them. And also you have to try and, in order to upgrade a drug to a different kind of drug that will get you more money, that will cure something more serious. It involves some really interesting kind of puzzly elements where you're trying to mix together 2 different drugs to get the traits that you want, or you can buy a machine called a shaker, which basically just literally shakes the medicine and changes the slots of the ingredients traits around. So there's these very literal things, and every time you see the ingredients on the conveyor belt going through a machine and you see the thing that comes out the other side, each machine will manipulate the values in some way. So it's all very literal. Like you start off, the ingredient comes through the wall and it gets manipulated in different numerical ways through these machines. You can mix them together, you can kind of change the traits, you can kind of evolve it in different ways, and then when it goes out of the door the other side, it's your finished medication. But you can trace a line through this crazy Rube Goldberg machine of like conveyor belts and like hadron colliders and cryogenic tanks and stuff, and see exactly every stage of that medicine's development, and I found that really fascinating, and it's quite hypnotic to look at your finished production line and just see it ticking along.
It is, and especially when you've got more than one production line as well. If you zoom out a bit and you see them all moving in unison, one step at a time forwards, it is quite hypnotic, and you kind of and then you realise that in actual fact about a month's passed and Medicore or whoever your next competitor is have produced some new wonder drug, and you've just been sitting there staring at your machines wondering what's going on. So yeah, no, it is.
I think if I was the CEO of a multinational corporation, I'd just have a glass wall on my office and just stare down at the conveyor belts. I wouldn't answer any of my emails, any of my phone calls. I suspect that's why my business has all failed, but
I don't know. I think probably after a while I might be tempted to try some of the stuff out. So I think I'd probably just be hepped up on about 15 different products all at once, because you get them for free, wouldn't you?
Ooh, I don't think I'd trust any of my products. So I think I might steer well clear of that.
I mean, the thing you say about the visual mechanisms, if you like. I mean, did I read it right that the guy who made it, Tim Wixty, he used to be a mechanical engineer. Is that right? Do you remember?
I think so. Yeah, I think if it passed my mind.
If ever
back
a game
to the
looked like it was designed by a guy who used to be a mechanical engineer, it's this, because you can, I know, I think was it his brother who did the art or something like that.
Yes, yeah, but, that's right. Yeah,
you can. It is literally what you're looking at is the mechanics of the game. The mechanics of the machines, the mechanics of the processes that are altering the drugs, and it's all done with the obviously the visuals. And like you say, you can on every machine and on drugs when they're going along the conveyor belts at different stages of their production, you can click on them and it comes up with a little pop-up that shows you at exactly that point what concentrations of different ingredients they have inside them, and what the effects are and what the side effects are, what cures you've got within that drug at that point, and what side effects you've got and to what levels. And then you've got to work out from that point how you manipulate those concentrations of those chemicals, I guess is what they actually are inside, to get the final finished product that you're actually trying to achieve. So it's
and at each point as well, it shows you the profitability of the drug at that particular stage. So like to make an anti-malarial medicine, for example, it will have to go through 2 other stages, because that's a level 3 medicine. It might start off as a cold and sickness medicine, and then it gets transformed into an antihistamine or something, and then it gets turned. So at each point along the chain you could sell that drug, but you're using that drug to make the next one along, and you can kind of like tweak the machines for hours and try and make the most perfect drug. You can kind of like analyze all of the ingredients.
You've got that analyzer, haven't you? That basically you put the drugs go into, or the ingredients go into it, or the drug goes into it. You build a little conveyor belt to it out of one of the sockets in the wall, and it trundles away for a little bit, and then comes back with an analysis to tell you what concentrations you want to try and hit for the cure kind of chemicals within each ingredient, and the kind of the highest point for the side effects as well. So you obviously most of the time you want to try and hit the cure at the sweet spot, and stay as far away as you can from the ones for side effects. But that becomes increasingly difficult, because quite often the two are quite close together, or quite often you have multiple side effects, and trying to avoid them all is very difficult. And at that point, obviously, then you have to make a judgment call about how close to the sweet spot for the cure you actually want to get, and how bad the side effects you want to try and avoid. And that then has every drug that you create has a cure rating, doesn't it? Which is rated like on a letter scale from like A to F, I think it is, or something like that.
Yeah, but I think there's an S rank as well, just like in Resident Evil.
And those kind of super cures as well. When as soon as you start producing a drug, you find out very quickly how good a drug you've produced, in essence, and it then is up to you whether you've then got these two things weighing on you, which quite often don't correspond to each other. Which is, you look at your production line after you've made it, and you can make choices like there are different machines that will speed up the process, but cost more to run, and there are you can decide whether you want to make your production line try and make it as profitable as possible per pill when you're producing them, or alternatively you can decide whether you want to actually, which usually involves throwing in more machines to try and make the best possible drug you can, and try and make your money that way. But obviously quite often that involves more processes, more fine-tuning, more machines, and it costs more. So it's every time you're presented with this, these decisions that the game requires you to make, is that how do you want to try and make your money, basically? Are you going to go for being the best? Are you going to go for being the cheapest? Are you going to go for somewhere in between? and it's it's up to you to make those decisions, and then
Yeah.
your business then lives or dies by them. Because say you've got a kind of a pretty steady kind of C grade, cough soother out there or something like that might be doing all right for you. If Medicore or somebody like that suddenly produces an A grade one, then you can be in quite a bit of trouble if you've pumped quite a lot of money into your C grade medicine.
Yeah.
So it's there are decisions to be made, and quite often you've got your fingers crossed for prolonged periods, hoping that the bottom doesn't fall out of a certain drug for you, because if it does, it means curtains for your business. So it's
or they don't file a patent, and then suddenly like this whole production line you've set up like is for nothing because the drug comes off and it's like, oh, we can't sell this, so we've just spent all of this money producing
we can't sell this for 6 years.
Into the bin.
Yeah. Like you mentioned it earlier, you dropped it early on, but right at the very top is a
I'm always dropping.
Yeah. is a Hadron Collider right at the top. So
a miniature Hadron Collider, and there's also one that looks like a Rubik's cube as well.
Oh yeah, what's that? There's an ultraviolet one as well. Quite a lot of these machines, what they do is they're more expensive, but they do the jobs of they basically do kind of the jobs of several of the machines lower down the tech tree all in one go.
Or they'll do something completely crazy, like switch every other ingredient with the one before it and stuff like that. It's like, oh.
So how far up the tech tree have you managed to climb?
Not too far, because I haven't played as much as I'd like to. I really want to unlock the Hadron Collider because it looks fun.
Yeah, that's
but
I mean, I think possibly in terms of, apart from the scenarios, but in free play, I think one of the things I found is that, and I think maybe I saw in the latest patch notes, they might have done something to curtail this a bit, but your competitors go at such a pace in terms of producing new drugs and patenting new drugs and working. Seem to be working at optimum, kind of like
super efficient.
Computer controlled levels at all points. But I think they might have done something to try and reduce that. But realistically, for me, competing against them at the moment has proved to be virtually impossible in terms of size of the company and turnover and things like that, and just kind of successes in terms of discoveries and and new,
that's classic AI.
New products.
Like your first step is you make an AI that is just super efficient, and then you realise that, well, actually, to make it fun to play against,
that's the difficult
part.
You
have to make it have human foibles and make mistakes, and that's harder to program than a perfect AI, for sure.
Like the best sim games, I think it's a game that's constantly shifting, even though mechanically underneath it's always the same. You're doing the same basic things, but the new discoveries that you have mean that you straight away, every time you get one, look afresh at all the problems that you've got and all the possibilities you've got, and that you can then kind of reevaluate and start to reprioritize and set yourself new goals and go from there. And if you've got something like a cryogenic freezer that's working, it looks cool as well. It's it is like I say, like all good sim games, the things that you unlock along the way really make you keep you pushing forward, because they are things that you want to get your hands on.
Yeah, and also like the other really cool thing about it is I don't think it's a pure strategy game. I think it's as much a puzzle game as it is a strategy game, and there's one really interesting part of the game is the spatial puzzle of it, the way you lay out your conveyor belts, and all of the machines have different compositions. They have an in and an out, and very often like the in and the out will be in a place that you don't want it to be, and you have to kind of really fiddle about and kind of like think how you. It's like playing Tetris at some point.
Yeah,
it's like, how am I going to fit everything into this really small space?
That's a very good analogy. It is, and you then as you progress, warehouse space becomes more and more costly, and so that as well factors into your decisions, because quite often for these more impressive drugs, you're going to need quite a lot of floor space to be able to fit all the machines in, to be able to create them as well. So you're constantly trying to work out in your head or on a bit of paper or something like that how you can fit all the machines that you think you need into the space that you've got money for,
and factor in some space for the future.
Absolutely,
for like machines that you don't know you need yet, but will probably need at some point.
No, I just have my analyzer in positioned just in a spot in the middle of my kind of giant warehouse by the end of things. And then one of the really useful things in the game is that you can pick up, without much penalty, you can pick up machines and move them around. You can sell them if you want,
which is good.
Yeah, but you definitely need to. It would be a nightmare without that, because almost every time you need to pick up and move machines around. But I just picked up my analyzer and moved it from socket to socket, to analyze the new stuff that I was producing.
Oh, that's a good idea.
So I just built a little conveyor belt to it, because you got some money back when you destroyed the conveyor belt as well, and it didn't cost that much. But just literally built the shortest conveyor belt I could straight into the analyzer, and moved it from place to place. And I think the other really beneficial factor, like I was saying to you before we started recording, I found was the pause button, because being able to pause at any point without any penalty, and just being able to sit there and think about things and possibly write stupid ideas down on a bit of paper or something like that, or try out floor plans and things, was really, really helpful. Because like you said earlier, if you make a mistake, then that can be extremely costly, and it's not necessarily the case that one mistake can cost you your business, but it can definitely set you back financially severely. And you can go correct it and stuff, but the game's constantly moving forward, and you constantly have to be on your toes to keep up with things. So having the pause button there, just to be able to have sit there and have a think about things, sit back for a few minutes and have a think, is really a welcome addition.
So all in all, I think, like, if you like your strategy games pretty deep and thinky, and are looking for something a little bit different and unusual, then this is a really interesting game to take a look at.
It's I'd say it's if you like this sort of game, then it obviously you're gonna enjoy this. It's I like playing sim games. I like playing strategy games. It wasn't one that initially, when I started playing it, I warmed to straight away. It took some time mainly to play the tutorials and then play them again. And then make some notes on the tutorials. But if you've got the patience to get into things, there's a lot of depth here, and I think the best thing is that, obviously, the further you go into it, the more involved you get. The depth continues to be provided. It doesn't, it doesn't kind of plateau at any point. It keeps getting deeper and deeper, and you get more and more involved in the empire that you've built, and you get more protective of it as well. You want to, I think the thing that came out for me at the end of it was that, although I've said quite a lot that it feels kind of sterile and cut off from the outside world and things like that, the pride that you have in a lot of sim games is there as well. Whether it's your theme park or your hospital or your family in the Sims or something like that, there's a pride at the end that you've put the time in, and you've got a lot to show for your efforts, some really complex stuff, and you've invented a male contraceptive at the end of the day, and I think that's I think that's something we could all be proud of, if we go home and tell our families that, so.
I was downstairs earlier with my housemates because I'd left. I'd gotten to the point where I just needed to make 300 hay fever pills or something. So I'd set up the production line basically. So I needed to leave it running for a while. So I just went downstairs and made a cup of tea. I was sitting there with my housemates, and I was like, I need to check to see if my antihistamines are ready. And just ran upstairs. And they were very confused. Yeah.
No, yeah. Just, saying to, oh, no, the bottom's fallen out of the genuine Jackie at Residue Market or something like that. I need to.
The bottom's fallen out of the constipation medicine market.
I need to send.
Oh, the best drug name, because you can name the drugs if you want, but it'll just give you a name.
Yeah.
And my favourite one I had was like it was a female contraceptive, and it was just called a preg attack, which I thought was brilliant.
I think possibly. I think my favourite one that I had was one for anxiety, and it was just called in all caps, "Don't panic." Like that, which
Nice,
which was pretty good.
Anyway, let's we should probably wrap this up.
I need to take some of my scientists and spin them around in a centrifuge to see if I can get a cure for baldness out of them or something like that. So
that's not how it works. You need to be putting the ingredients in the centrifuge, not the scientists.
Not even if they're fully haired scientists.
I don't think so.
That's where I've been going wrong then.
Yeah, exactly.
I need to reevaluate my whole business plan.
You do.
Yeah. Pills, not people. That's what we should.
Yeah, that's great. So if you want to join in on our next discussion,
and why wouldn't you
play along at home? Why wouldn't you after this rambling mess? I'm sure it's fine.
It'll be fine. Honestly,
it's fine. Next time we're going to be playing Everyone's Gone to the Rapture, I believe. Which is currently on PS4.
Yeah, and is it?
I think it's only PS4.
Yeah, I think it is at the moment.
Yeah.
Is it?
I can by the Chinese room.
Yeah, the guys who did Dear Esther.
Dear Esther.
Can I ask a question? I always say Everyone's Gone to the Rapture. Is it Everyone's Gone to the Rapture or is it Everybody's Gone to the Rapture?
I think it's Everyone's Gone to the Rapture.
I trust you.
Although
there's one way I say it, and it's always the wrong way, and now I'm confused about which way I even say it. So
although Jeff Bacala on the Giant Beast cast insists on calling it "Everyone's Gone to their Rapture," which I think it should be reinstated as the actual title.
I don't know. I think when I was growing up, I'm sure there was a nightclub called Rapture, the Rapture, or something like that. So yeah.
Rapture's got a kind of a real pedigree in the gaming space.
Yeah, that's very true.
We can talk about that next time.
I guess it's not that Rapture we're talking about. Because I went there, and then I went back there again in the third one, or the second one.
I believe it's the religious Rapture, which is kind of interesting.
Oh, really?
No. Yeah, I believe so. So play along at home. Go and check that game out. Just to quickly mention, I mentioned that the game was Big Pharma was in early access. It looks like it came out 2 days ago, so it is actually out now. It's been in early access for a while, but it is available on Good Old Games as well, or GOG as they insist on calling themselves these days. It's available on Steam, Good Old Games. It's about 15 quid, and it's worth picking up.
Yeah, I'd say if you like this sort of game, it's probably not going to be for everybody, and I would think that some people would find it quite too dry, you know. But if you like your sim games, you like your strategy games, and if you are interested in starting a large pharmaceutical company or even a small one, then it's definitely something to have a look at, because I found my time with it, both enjoyable and interesting. So
yeah, practice makes perfect.
Well, we'll see about that.
Practice makes profit.
Yeah. That should be my motto of my company. I think that would be
great.
Yeah, we'll sort that out.
Well, I will speak to you again in hopefully a couple of weeks. We'll reconvene and talk about Everyone's Gone to the Rapture.
Yeah, maybe I could take my pharmaceutical company to the Rapture. Do you think that would be? We could be the leading pharmaceutical company post Rapture.
I'm sure that drugs would be entirely necessary in that situation.
I'm thinking I found a niche.
Yes.
That I'm going to exploit in my newly found hard-nosed business lifestyle.
Good luck with that.
I've got to go and sack some explorers now.
Okay.
And some researchers.
Put some scientists in the centrifuge.
Yeah.
Okay, have fun with that.
Thanks very
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.